last time some of us met before the budget and we explored many of the things that the government could possibly do. Well, I think I speak for a large number of people in India who are let down by this government's budget because they had an extraordinary confluence of factors that gave them an opportunity to do something dramatic and transformative. And the low inflation rate, low oil prices, a mandate in the lower house, things like that. This was a very good time to do something significant. Now, when I talk about significant, I'm not talking about just random measures, but deep structural challenges. For example, the recapitalization of banks. We want infrastructure, and this budget does address infrastructure, but even the economic survey, they talk about a huge percentage of GDP, 7.5 or so, stuck in infrastructure projects, right? So this is probably an area where much more attention, much more allocation of resources could have actually yielded a much bigger bang, right? And that we see much less attention to that. And the other part, the bank recapitalization, would have got the banks more interested in lending once again. And there's been a market slowdown in those sectors. And lots of factors for that having to do with economic cycles, international, what shall we say, markets slowing down, everything sort of coming down, our own experience with PPP, things like that. The other sector where I thought we would have seen much more is in housing and construction, right? That is an example of something where you have much, very significant multiplier impacts, and that you could have seen much more coming out of that. Now, the part that really concerns me is what are we doing to our human component of our future, right? So we need people who have health and education and social security and a whole bunch of other aspects. And here, while all of us are looking at these transfer of funds to the states and things like that, Mr. Chidambaram makes the point that actually we have not, that overall transfer remains at 62% of revenues. And so when the finance minister says we are not going to have to do this, it's going to the states as part of that 42% untied funds, he says actually that there is no increase in the total amount of money that is in the hands of states. So if that is the case, if we are cutting central expenditure on many of these dimensions, whether it is programs focused on the Rashtriya Kisan Vikas Yojana, food security, the SC sub-plan, the tribal sub-plan, health, children, minorities, water, whatever, right? And all these crop insurance, all these places you see a cut, and everyone has assumed that that cut will be made up by this transfer to the states. Well, from what we are, as we sort of pay more attention to the detailed numbers, it appears that we may have erred on that front. We may have been mistaken, and that these are actual cuts. And that is something that would be very, very worrisome, because on the one hand, you're talking about extending social security and insurance and pensions, which is just a very fantastic continuation. Lavish kept talking about continuation of UPA. Well, one continuation of UPA here that we see is our UPA concern for the poor, for the social safety nets that we need to create. And you see that movement now in terms of this, in terms of pension and insurance and things like that. Now, the issue is, we are, if we are going to neglect public goods in a variety of domains, then who is going to fill that gap? Right? If education comes down, if healthcare comes down, are you going to have people spend even more out of their own pockets in the private sector, saying that there's some insurance that they have? I'm not at all sure that this is going to lead us in the direction that we would actually want to go.